So, as this is a programming interlude for our course, what I will tell you is what we are going to follow through in is the very first schmucky exercise that everybody does in every programming language, and it's called Hello World. If you haven't already done so, let's go ahead and open brackets back up, and if you're in brackets still, let's do the following. In the upper left-hand corner, let's open a new file. So click on File, and let's do New. The very first thing you'll notice is, now this is going to depend on whether or not you have done a vertical or a horizontal split. This is only what I see on my PC as I'm doing this, but if you're on a Mac or a PC, it should be very, very similar. Is on the right-hand pane, what you'll notice is an untitled document with a line number. So the number 1 you see right there next to our blinking cursor is line number 1. As we go through in developing our web pages, I expect that there are going to be questions. This is very probably unlike anything you've done in any of the Office documents before, so I expect this is going to be different. That's why we have a little bit of extra time here at the end of the semester. If anything is going to go wrong, especially here in an online course, I expect it to go wrong here with HTML. So please, 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 just as a reminder, do not hesitate to reach out with a question. When you do so, though, send me a copy of your file alongside with the message. What I will actually be able to do is give you what is known as markup. I can go through there and actually give you in line with the code that you have provided me answers to your questions, and that has a tendency to, I think, work a lot better than when you have a question and you're trying to verbally describe to me what the question is. That's difficult. Give me a question, point me in the right direction, and what I can do is return to you that file with in line as you're coding the point in the right direction that you're looking for. Now, every time it is that you have created a new HTML document, here in brackets, what we have to do is save it with a file type, with a file extension immediately. If we don't do that, the default is a simple text.txt document, whether or not you're on Mac or Windows. And that's not exactly what we're looking for. What we have to do is build HTML documents. If we don't save our text as HTML, when we go back in to try and see it, to actually view it in a browser, so again, Firefox or Chrome or, heaven forbid, Internet Explorer or Edge, it's just going to show up as simple plain text. That's not what we're looking for. So if you go back over to the File menu and say Save, we're going to save this document. Now, for those of you who are keyboard shortcut junkies, that's going to be me. What I will do is give you the keyboard shortcuts for what we're going through here on a Mac or a PC so that you can get everything as smooth in action as possible. So it's Control S for save. So the first time we save this, we're going to have to change the file type. So the very first thing I'm going to do, and this is going to be a little different if you're on a Mac or if you're on a PC, but hopefully you'll be able to navigate along with us, is I'm going to save this HTML document on my desktop. It's the easiest place for me to find it, and quite frankly, when we're done with this short little interlude, you're not going to keep this document. Very probably you'll just throw it away, and that's perfectly okay. Under file name, so once I've already selected I want to save this on the desktop, I want to change the file name. Now I want to call this Hello World. A bit of a note on how to save files in HTML for web development. There's a little bit of a rule structure rather that we have to follow along here. The key to this is what is known as camel case, uppercase, lowercase. The first word in Hello World, so hello, is going to be all lowercase. The first letter of any subsequent word is going to be uppercase. And I hate to do this to you, but our document is going to be called HELLO capital WORLD, Hello World. The reason for this is so that when the next developer in line comes through and looks at your your HTML. So when I look at your web page, I'm going to, instead of having to parse out as I'm reading hello world, instead of having to do that, my eyes are going to track along your file name, and I'm going to see that it's hello world. Don't get too excited. Don't hit enter just yet. Now say .html. Without that .html, this is going to be a simple text file, and it is not going to open up in your browser. So do not forget the .html. The number one biggest issue I'm going to see when you guys are handing things in, and I can guarantee I'm going to get this question. I'm pretty sure I have this coded right, but it's not opening up in a browser. What's the issue? Check your file extension. If it is not .html, it's a simple fix. Whether or not you are on a Mac or a PC, all you have to do is right-click your document and under rename or properties, depending on whether or not you're on a PC or a Mac. Rename should be there, though, on both of those platforms. Simply add .html after your file name. Both systems are going to ask, are you sure you want to change the file extension? And you are. It's not going to erase your document. You're not going to force any changes. All you're going to do is tell your system this is not a document. It's a web page instead. So it's not a huge mistake if you make it. But before we do so, make sure it's HELLO capital W ORLD .html. And that is going to save this as an HTML document. What you'll notice here in the brackets window is that instead of Untitled -1, it's going to actually change to HTML. And now, as we're typing along, brackets is going to be smart enough to do what is called syntax highlighting. Brackets is going to know what to highlight in colors so that you know what you're doing at a glance. As opposed to highlight everything in red. When you see big blocks of red, you will know that, oops, I have forgotten something and I need to go back and make a change. So this is one way that brackets is a far, far superior code editing tool to Notepad or to text edit. The syntax highlighting really saves you a ton of time. The very next thing we need to know about HTML is that things have to reside inside of what is known as a tag. Now, to signify a tag, we have the less than and the greater than sign. So these are on, and again, this is not going to have a bearing on whether or not you're on a PC or a Mac. Next to the M on your keyboard, and so it's to the right-hand side of the M, and to the left-hand side of the question mark are the greater than and less than signs. That creates, whatever we put inside of there, creates a tag. Now, if you were in Notepad or TextEdit, you would have to actually make the opening and the closing, so the less than and the greater than sign. Here in brackets, because it's doing some of the heavy lifting for you, as soon as you hold down Shift and then the less than sign, what you're going to notice is a little drop-down box. And in that drop-down box, there's going to be a list of suggestions. These suggestions are everything that you need to be able to actually put a tag together. So the first tag we need is HTML, just to do that a little bit more slowly. And what you'll notice is brackets is actually going to go through and highlight HTML for you. If you go ahead and hit enter, what it's going to do is essentially hide that suggestion. Once we put in the closing tag, so Shift greater than, what you'll notice is brackets is going to automatically fill in for you what is known as the closing tag. So what you'll notice here in the brackets window is a less than sign, a forward slash, so that is not a backslash like you would see if we were putting together a file path or a web address. It's actually a forward slash. Forward slash HTML means stop it with the HTML, essentially. Now, what I'm going to do, you'll notice the cursor is right there between my opening and closing tags. What I am going to do is hit enter 5 or 6 times. I've hit it 6 times for myself here. and everything in between. So between lines 2 and now I've hit it one more time. So my line is number 8. You'll notice that number 1, I'm getting line numbers. This is going to make me pointing at parts of your code that may or may not have errors entirely easier for you to go back and make that edit. And number 2 is what we have done is create Whitespace. In most programming languages, now I understand that we will be able to find, given a long enough timeline, a programming language where this is not true, but for most of us, in any programming language that we're going to take, so here at RVC, if you take Java, if you take C++, if you take C#, it doesn't really matter, it's Whitespace. Whitespace is here for you. It is not here for the system. Whitespace gives these big block visual distinctions that you can tell this is one tag, this is another. This is a content block, that's where I put a bunch of stuff, and this is another. So don't be afraid of Whitespace. It is here for you so that you can get along a little bit more easily. So I'm going to go ahead on line number 3 and start a new opening tag. What we need here is a title. So I'm going to spell the rest of title. And as soon as I put in the closing, the greater than sign for that, what you'll notice is brackets goes ahead and it fills out for me the closing tag. This is fantastic. It will save you time. It will save you in errors. In HTML, for almost every tag that is opened, we need a closing tag, and we'll get to that in just a second. So we'll start here with our title. The title is what we are going to see when we open a new Chrome tab or a new Firefox tab, or again, heaven forbid, a Internet Explorer or Edge tab. That is going to be essentially the name of our page. A title is not, strictly speaking, necessary, but absolutely positively it is necessary. Every year Chrome puts out usage statistics. And what we know from Chrome usage statistics, and actually these very, very closely mirror what we would see from usage statistics in Firefox, and again, heaven forbid, Internet Explorer or Edge, is that the average user has between 13 and 17 open tabs at any time. So that means a title is absolutely positively necessary. It is the least you can do to let whatever your unknown potential future user is, somebody who's going to come through and look at your web page, when they go from one tab to another, when they go from one window to another, it's a quick and easy way for your user to go, okay, what tab is it that I need to go back to? Oh, it's this one. So we are going to call our page Hello World. I'll give you a moment to type that there. I am including capital letters here. It's not the title is not anything that has a bearing on the save name that you have for your file. This is there for the user. So I'm going to put it there in a way that a user would expect. So that's capital letters, Hello World. If you'll notice, when you are using RVC Eagle, it actually says Canvas up there. Canvas is the name of the platform we use. When you go to rockvalleycollege.edu, you would actually see Rock Valley College up there because that's clearly the website that you're using. When you go to Google, you would see Google up there. If you accidentally go to Yahoo, you would see Yahoo up there. So the title is exactly what it sounds like. It is us giving the user an idea of what it is that's happening on this page. One more thing I will point out here is that you will notice that for me, this is on line number 3 again, that line number 3 is indented. It has a little bit of space from the left-hand side of the window, and brackets is going to maintain that for us. This is fantastic. And again, this is another great tool that's automatically built into brackets that gives you, the coder, a really easy visual distinction that lets you know that whatever element it is we're working on, in this case is going to be title, is indented because it belongs inside of HTML. So this again is brackets working in your favor as opposed to something like Notepad or something like TextEdit that's going to work not against you necessarily, but it's not going to work as hard as brackets is to make your life easier. Next, we're going to go on to the body. So at the end of the line, at the end of line number 3, where I have the closing tag, so the greater than sign / title, I'm just going to hit enter again. And what you'll notice is here on line number 4, again, it's going to be indented. I am going to open a tag, so shift less than. And what I need here is body. So BODY. And as soon as I close that tag, you're going to see that brackets goes ahead and does the work for me and gives you the closing tag for body. I'm going to do the very same thing I did here with HTML, is give myself a little bit of white space. I've just hit enter 7 times. So the closing tag for body happens to be on line number 12. That is not a requirement. It is just me providing a little bit of white space here. Body is the tag that we're going to use to put all the content out to the user. So by and large, what we're going to see is most of the HTML coding that you are going to do resides or lives inside of body. So this is what's going to be printed out to the user inside of the main browser window that we can see. So this is going to be just cheap and dirty. If I simply say hello world right there in the body, that's what's going to happen in my my window. So what I'm going to do here is save. So again, for those of you on a PC, this is Control S. For those of you on a Mac, this is Command S. And what that's going to do is save my progress. If I want to check and see how my progress is, again, this is going to be contingent on you installing Chrome. So if you have not already done that, if you are hoping I can drag my heels indefinitely and never install Chrome, now's a good chance to pause this podcast, go out and download a copy of Chrome. You don't have to sign in. You can uninstall it when we're done. The very same is with brackets when we are done with this semester. If you choose not to go on and take more with Web 101 or Web 102 HTML coding, you can simply remove brackets. It doesn't take a huge penalty on your system, and away you go. So over to the right, just a little bit there, I have my lightning bolt icon, and I'm going to go ahead and tap on that and wait just a moment for a live preview to be generated. I have a couple of windows I have to move away from there. What you're going to notice is a new clean instance of Chrome. So just in case you had Chrome open in the background, so personally I actually have Chrome open in the background where RVC Eagle resides, where my calendar actually resides, in a bunch of other tabs. I get a new running instance of Chrome. So just in case something goes horribly wrong, I can actually close this instance of Chrome and it's not going to kill all of my other windows. So that's a bonus. What we're going to notice here is that in the upper left hand corner, I'm going to have a new tab for Chrome, and you're going to notice Hello World. That was my title. The next thing you're going to notice is here in the body of my Chrome window, I have Hello World one more time. That's because I typed Hello World in the body of my HTML document. Now, there's some things that you're going to notice here about the way that Hello World is actually displayed. Number one is that what we are looking at is the actual default for Chrome. Whether or not you're on a Mac or a PC or a Linux box or a Chromebook, every browser has a default font. Every browser has a default font size. So this one happens to look to me an awful lot like Times New Roman, and that's perfectly okay. Actually, the whole job of an HTML developer, so that's you for the time being, the whole job of a web developer is to give style to what we're seeing happening here inside of an HTML document. Anything else you can notice here is going to be, if there was a spelling mistake, there's going to be a spelling mistake. Brackets and every other developing environment, so whether or not I am using brackets or Notepad++ or if I'm using something a little more drag and drop. So if I'm using any of the Adobe suite, if I'm using any one of a host of other pieces of software, spelling mistakes are going to be your fault. One of the top 3 things that makes a user walk away from your web page is spelling mistakes. Load time is number 1. This seems to me to be a first world problem, but I will admit to you this is absolutely something I know I do myself, is we have a very, very short attention span when it comes to how long is it that I'm going to allow a website before it loads. Generously, it takes about 3 seconds. It's a little bit under that 2.8. So 1, 2, 3. If I don't see content before that, I'm going to close the window and go someplace else. Spelling mistakes are something that really detracts a user's attention. So just in case I said hello, W-R-O-L-D, world, that's not okay. That's something you would have to go back and fix on your own. So type like you mean it, because these environments do not do what Word and Excel and PowerPoint do, which is give you that nice little red squiggly line and say, hey, you might have misspelled this. You're on your own here. So now that I can see that I have a little bit of text, hello world, now that I can see that I have a page with a title, hello world, I'm going to go ahead and close this Chrome window because I'm done with it. And what we're going to do is go back to brackets and actually add a little bit of markup. We're actually going to go through and add style to how it is that our text content is going to be displayed for the user. Because most of what you're going to see in the way of the actual learning content for this HTML module is actually going to be housed in that XHTML document. I'm going to keep the content here really small, really skinny, and really quick. We're going to get much, much, much more complicated and much better looking web pages put together by simply following through with that web design document. But for the time being, so my hello world happens to be on line number 5, so I'm going to hit enter, and I want to get to the next line. This behavior is not going to be the same for everybody. Just in case line number 6 is indented a little bit, if you simply hit backspace, it's going to align all of the future text that we enter here on the same vertical line with title and body, and that's where I'm going to put things. Brackets may or may not, it actually acts a little differently based on everybody's install, I've noticed. Just in case it does that, you can go ahead and delete any of those extra indentations to make things look and function the way you want them to. I understand that at this point you're not going to have any way, shape, or form of a preference. You may develop one here shortly, but for the time being, wherever it is, frankly, that brackets puts your cursor is going to be okay. So I'm just going here to line number 7 where I have a clear empty line, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in a couple more tags. The tag I'm going to put in here is H1. H1 is a large heading. So inside of that, so after I say H1 and then the closing bracket, so that's shift and greater than, or shift and it's the key next to the question mark, I'm going to put large, L-A-R-G-E, heading. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and go on line number 8. I'm going to add another tag, and this one's going to be H2. That one's a slightly less large heading. So I'm just going to say heading so that it shows up there. And I'm going to put that in between the opening and the closing tag for H2. After this, I'm going to put in H3. Opening tag, H3, and then closing tag. And what you'll notice again is that brackets fills in the closing tag for us there, the /H3, and I'm just going to put heading again. What I'm going to do is save it now. So for those of you who are on a PC, that's Control S. For those of you on a Mac, it's Command S. And I'm going right back to that lightning bolt so that I can actually see what this little bit of code is going to do. So Chrome fires up. We give it a moment. And what we can see is at the very, very top of our page, we still have in the tab On the top, we still have our title. At the top of the page, we have Hello World because I did not remove that. And then immediately underneath that, I have large heading, and a smaller heading on lines all by themselves. You'll notice I didn't have to tell HTML that I was going to do anything like go from one line to another. That's actually the result of having an H1, an H2, and an H3. Those tags by themselves tell your browser, hey, this is how I want to be displayed. So a very large heading, a medium heading, and a smaller heading. And it also tells the browser, hey, when I'm done with this, what I want you to do is go on to the next line immediately underneath that. So HTML coding takes care of a lot of the, what you're going to do in between lines. It really takes care of a lot of that kind of stuff for you. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and close my Chrome window here, and I'm going to insert my cursor here on line number 11. That just happens to be one blank empty line after my H3. We're just going to go through and play with a couple of tags here so that you can see some of what you're going to see in that HTML document, which again, the next podcast is going to address. The next easy tag we're going to have here is a paragraph. So the opening and the closing are going to be around a P. So it's less than, P, greater than. And you'll notice again that brackets gives me the closing tag for that. A paragraph is exactly what it sounds like. It is a paragraph for you to put in there. So I'm going to type the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy yellow dog. And that's going to be a paragraph all to itself. Now, if you do not put a period in there, it is not going to display a period. If you do not put uppercase letters for like the letter T, for example, it is not going to be in there. The correctness of the text that you insert here is really all up to you. So what I'm going to have you do here is save it one more time. It's the last time I'll tell you that if you are on a PC, it's Control S. If you are on a Mac, it's Command S. And I'm going to go ahead and click that lightning bolt one more time so that I can see my paragraph has actually shown up here. And what you'll notice is indeed, if everything has gone right, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy yellow dog is going to be on the line all of itself, and it's going to be roughly similar to the same size as Hello World. The very first line of our text was, because that's the size that the browser has determined is a paragraph text for us. Now, everything else that you're going to see is going to be in the HTML PDF. There's going to be a link here underneath this podcast so that you can see, and there is going to be another podcast with it, so that you can see how the document kind of continues and how to actually interact with that document. For the time being, on the other hand, what we have created here with our Hello World HTML is a very, very simple, very, very functional web page. So this is something we could actually put up on a server someplace. We would call it Hello World. I would suggest actually that we would change the name to index.html because that's actually on the server side what a server environment is going to look for. Index.html actually tells the server, hey, this is going to be our first web page. But for us, for the time being, this is actually a functional web page. So if you were to open this document just on the desktop, so what I'm going to do is if you are on a Windows PC, it's flag D. That's going to get us to the desktop. If you are on a Mac, it is Command Shift H. That's going to hide everything, I believe. You will notice on the desktop we actually have Hello World, and you will notice that the icon for that is going to be whatever browser it is that you have set as the default. So again, hopefully it's Firefox or Chrome, but in no good circumstance it may actually show up as Internet Explorer or as Edge. So that is our very, very first web page. I will admit to you it is not particularly complicated, but that is what the next document is there for you for. So next, after this, follow along with the next podcast, which is navigating the XHTML assignment document.